Helpless as floodwaters filled their truck. 2 young children inside. Omar Villafranca reports guardian angels arrived.
We got a baby! Call 911!
It became a race against time after a baby and toddler were trapped inside this overturned truck in Myrtle Springs, Texas. Their parents, Philip and Emily Ochiltree, were also inside, desperately calling for help.
There's people outside. There are people here, and that's when I started screaming and yelling, "Help, help, help, help us."
When Good Samaritans arrived, the children were nearly dead. The man filming the scene, Tom Mitchell, put his phone down to perform CPR on the little girl.
In the name of Jesus, come on, let him breathe, Lord. It's more. There she goes.
The parents say watching the video is hard.
Everything happened so fast.
As soon as they opened the door and they're like, "How many people are in here?" And I said, "Get my 2 kids out now."
Both children will make a full recovery. The toddler, Addie, is still in the hospital, but is stable. Her baby brother, Marshall, is back home. Their parents credit the people who rescued them and got a chance to express their gratitude yesterday.
Thank you so much.
The Ochiltree say they'd like for Addie to meet all the heroes who saved her life.
You want to go save them. You want to help them. But me being all frantic, it's not going to help her anymore. And then I wouldn't have been able to do anything because I was just wanted to make sure she was okay.
What's the first thing she said to you?
Ma.
Ma.
Ma, with her eyes still closed. Ma. And I was right there, just right there waiting.
About 50 minutes after the National Weather Service put Henderson County, Texas under a tornado watch, this twister tore across a highway. 20 miles northeast in Canton, drivers on I-20 were forced to pull over for this massive funnel cloud.
That was close.
Officials blame the tornado outbreak in Van Zandt County for at least 4 deaths and nearly 50 injuries. Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
There's a possibility that one of these tornadoes was on the ground for up to a 50-mile stretch, which would be the longest stretch of a tornado on the ground that I've ever heard of.
At one point, nearly 10,000 people were without power after massive transmission poles like this one were knocked down. The tornadoes tossed cars at this dealership and blew this storage facility to pieces. Severe weather in Mississippi killed 1 person and a child was electrocuted while playing outside after a rainstorm. In Arkansas, 2 children were swept away from their mother in fast-moving floodwaters. They're still missing. Torrential rains there killed at least 1 person, and roads and homes were flooded.
We were in about, I guess, 2 or 3 inches of water.
Yeah, we received all this was flooded when we came.
2 people drowned in Missouri, and this tractor trailer was swept away by floodwaters. Roads in Oklahoma were also washed out.
I'm a little bit scared that there's a possibility this may surpass the 2015 flood.
The Black River spilled across Pocahontas, Arkansas after heavy rains breached a levee. About 50 homes have been destroyed and up to 100 homes and businesses damaged. Where were the breaches?
They were east of here, probably.
Cecil Tackett is the city's police chief.
This morning at 6 o'clock, there was fish swimming across here.
Across this highway?
Yes.
Murky floodwaters turned this playground into a water park. Days of torrential rainfall caused a number of rivers near Pocahontas to swell as much as 9 inches. Add the nearly 8 inches that fell on Pocahontas last week, and it was more than the levee could take. The threat of a breach forced a mandatory evacuation of the city of 7,000 on Monday. Rising waters sent folks like Jeff Junkersfeld to move his mom out of harm's way.
It's sad. A lot of people had to get their stuff out and get out of their element and find places to stay, find places to live.
Portions of major highways across the state are closed as sandbags are piled along flooded roads. The deluge is part of the most extreme flooding in the region in a century. Hundreds of roads are also closed in neighboring states, including Missouri.
Search and rescue crews arm in arm, foot by foot, looking for any sign of 2 children swept away by powerful floodwaters. The 18-month-old girl and 4-year-old boy were trapped inside a truck that was swept away. The mother managed to escape. This is a very dangerous operation. The further downstream they go, the faster that water is rushing and the harder it is for them to hold their footing. Right now, parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri all under a state of emergency. Several deaths blamed on this storm, including a firefighter hit by a car while checking utility lines. Authorities there ordering evacuations. For some, it was too late. This pregnant mother and her husband trapped, firefighters rescuing them by boat. In Missouri, this man barely escaping from his truck before it was submerged in rushing waters. In Oklahoma, hail and heavy wind pounding the state. Rushing water trapping people inside this restaurant near Tulsa. And an 8-year-old boy sucked into a storm drain in Illinois.
Your 8-year-old child sucked into a drain pipe.
Somehow coming out 50 feet on the other end, alive and okay.
A security alert has gone out to America's trucking industry about stolen trucks being used as weapons.
CBS News learned today that the warning from the TSA deals with attacks using trucks to ram into crowds. It highlights last July's attack in Nice, France. 86 people were killed, another 400 injured, when a man who claimed loyalty to ISIS drove a rented truck through a crowd at a Bastille Day celebration. In this country, a student drove his car into a crowd at Ohio State University last year, injuring 11 people and then stabbing at least one person. He was also inspired by ISIS. The 6-page report from TSA went out to truck and bus companies as well as school bus operators and cited 17 vehicle attacks worldwide since 2014. 173 people were killed and 667 injured in the attacks. Police departments across the country have been on high alert for these types of attacks. They have changed how security is provided, from everything from parades to the inauguration of President Trump. Many of these attacks, called low-tech, have been carried out by so-called lone wolves, which makes it difficult for police and intelligence agencies to detect any planning. In a statement, the TSA pointed out that no community, large or small, rural or urban, is immune to a vehicle attack.
On land, in the sky, on the seas, and even below. U.S. military hardware on display, meant to send a clear message to the DPRK.
North Korea is a big problem, and we will deal with that very strongly.
There are already some 28,000 U.S. troops stationed in the Republic of Korea working alongside ROK troops. And Washington is now reportedly considering a range of new military options, including deploying small, short-range tactical U.S. nuclear missiles. U.S. nuclear weapons were removed from the ROK in 1991. Jenny Town is deputy director of the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University. She says some hardliners in Seoul support the return of tactical nukes to the ROK.
They see this as the way to protect themselves against the growing North Korea threat. And I think there is still some concern as to whether or not the U.S. really will come to the aid of South Korea and how strong that alliance is if something should break out.
The U.S. already has long-range missiles and submarines that could strike the DPRK with nuclear weapons. So Town says U.S. nukes on ROK soil would be largely meant to project strength, while adding more instability to an already tense situation, possibly even prompting the DPRK to launch a preemptive strike.
You can expect some very harsh reactions from North Korea, a lot more rhetoric. It might increase the pace at which they develop their nuclear weapons program. But then also dealing with the Japanese issue as well. What happens if South Korea gets tactical nuclear weapons? Will then Japan want tactical nuclear weapons? And then how does China respond to all of that?
Now, David Martin has the story of another fallen hero who has given us a view of the battlefield that few ever see.
July 2nd, 2013, the very last moment of Army Specialist Hilda Clayton's life. She took this photo in the split second between when a mortar tube accidentally exploded and the blast killed her and 4 Afghan soldiers.
Hard remembering that day?
Yes, sir.
Specialist Shanae Brooks was in the same unit as Clayton.
In a way, she left a memorial.
She died doing what she loved.
These 2 photos, taken by Clayton and an Afghan photojournalist, remained private for nearly 4 years, but have now been published in an Army journal with their family's permission.
Are you glad to see that photo now out there in the public?
I don't think any photo that I've seen can compare to that photo that she has, the last shot of how she died in that photo.
Clayton was a combat cameraman assigned that day to photograph the training of the Afghan army by their American advisors. She was a small part of a largely unknown effort by the Pentagon to create a visual record of U.S. military operations.